Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Profits Podcast with your host, Chris Davison.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Davison. I just want to thanks for joining us today. Today, we're looking at beyond win-win or win-lose mentality, the value creation blueprint for unlimited deals. I want to talk about that a little bit. So I think there's a couple of things to think about. There's some different strategies I realize in business. One is win-lose mentality, what that looks like. We'll cover it today. And there's a win-win people try to do in deals. And then there's also the how can I help and add value? So kind of get into that today. I think that's the problem is looking at things and we're taught that, real estate's a blood sport. You watch TV shows or you listen to old school gurus. They tell you to go in and be a shark and squeeze every dime out of a seller. And I've sat through talks with buyers and sellers, and I feel like it's so painful. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I get into a situation, they're trying to squeeze every dollar out of me. But I also want to think, how can it be better? And talk today about hopefully how it can be better, how we can figure that out. So if you act like a shark, you go into trying to get every dime out of a person, you might get one deal. You may, but you leave a wake of blood in the water, I think. So sellers hate you. Wholesalers block your number. People don't want to talk to you. And then realtors refuse to show you pocket listings they have. Loan officers or private money folks, they won't work with you again. You just put a bad taste in people's mouths. So I was trying to think of a way to do this better. I heard this a few years ago. I really bought into it. I believe it. And I've seen this many times. So I want to offer a solution, a different way to do business. And I think you can have true wealth in real estate. And I don't think it's built on a single cutthroat, one transaction, but it's built on repeat business and reputation. And I've heard this before, and you probably have too. How you do anything is how you do everything. So we'll cover this today. We'll be tearing down the old ways of negotiating and showing you the ultimate hack to deal flow. So plus I find life more enjoyable and fulfilling for all parties when we can try to do a reciprocating deal that we're able to help and add value to each other. There's 3 ways to do a deal, 3 ways to do business, or 3 ways to do life. You can look at win-lose, win-win, and what I call value creation, which is how can I help or add value to what you're doing method. So let's just use a little analogy. I like word pictures, I like analogies. Let's use a pizza analogy, and I'll just show you how this works. So let's have a win-lose philosophy. We order a pizza. I take 7 slices, and then you get 1 slice. I'm happy, and then you're starving. So that's the win-lose. You'll never order a pizza with me again, probably more than likely. The win-win strategy is I want pepperoni, you want mushrooms. We compromise and get plain cheese. This is probably my favorite pizza. But neither of us got what we actually wanted. But hey, it's fair. Let's look at it that way. If you look at value creation, I ask, why you want pepperoni? And then you say what you want, something spicy. I want mushrooms, which I actually don't like mushrooms, but we're using for this example because I want veggies. So we order a Supreme with jalapenos. We both get exactly what we need without just watering down the deal. So looking at things differently and trying to understand what the other person wants and what their needs are, and then look to see how you can help or add value to their needs. Really try to solve their problem. Because today we want to be creative. We want to solve problems. That's our whole strategy. So the pitch today, we're going to learn the win-lose concept is a fast track to failure. Why the famous win-win concept is actually incredibly hard to pull off. And then what I believe is the value creation or how I can help and add value approach will make you the most sought after real estate investor in your market. So let's get into some nuts and bolts, how to do this. The trap of win-lose. So this is a trap. And if you're looking just to be transactional, to have the shark mentality, to be aggressive, I don't enjoy working with those people. I've done many deals even recently. I don't like it. The tactic is the investor who lowballs you, beats up the seller, or for the inspection, threatens to walk away at the closing table just to get a $2,000 credit. The result, it's like arm wrestling, I think. When you're in a win-lose mentality, for someone to win, someone else has to get their hand slammed to the table. So I think there's a fatal flaw in this strategy. The real estate is a small world. When you operate this way, you destroy your reputation. People will actively avoid bringing deals to you. You'll lose many, many more deals than you'll get. And then you get a reputation. That's who you are. So I think the hidden cost of winning, if we can just be honest, is you have a lot of friction, which isn't enjoyable. People don't want to do business with you, and you blow a lot of deals. Sellers get emotional. If they feel like they're losing to you, They'll blow up a deal over a $500 refrigerator. That's happened to me just out of spite. And this has happened to many other folks. So I just don't get it. I don't want to do business that way. And so obviously you might win a negotiated battle, but you lose the war because the deal falls out of escrow. You're not closing, costing you time and money. And this is very common. And I think this is a very common way folks do business. I'd say it's probably about a third of real estate transaction is the win-lose. So I like to do things outside the box. I like to do things differently. I think most people do. It's hard for some folks to process this, to understand it. So they get defensive or they find they fear deals or the guard goes up and they can be confused. I think a confused mind goes up and it goes negative and it says no. When we feel we're losing, it's become combative. And I get this way. I know others do as well. So let's just look at that's the win-lose philosophy. Let's look at the myth of win-win. Why I think win-win's a unicorn. It is hard to do because what I think's a win and you think's a win is never a win. Everybody sees things differently. There's three sides to every story. Yours, mine, the truth. That's kind of how win-win is. So every business book preaches win-win that I've read. It sounds great on paper, but I think in reality, true equality in real estate transaction is incredibly rare. The compromise trap, I think, is something you come see, I look at. Usually a win-win just means both sides gives up something they value until they can meet a mediocre middle. So I don't like that. It's just not, once again, not enjoyable, but it is a step up from win-lose. So the friction, there's a lot of friction in a win-win and people's egos get involved. And when you aim for win-win, so let me give you an example where both parties completely keep score. I give up the inspection contingency, so they need to come down $5K, for example. The takeaway in that kind of situation is it turns the deal into a math equation instead of a relationship. And it takes immense time and energy to balance the scales perfectly, and often both parties still walk away feeling a little bruised. So I think this is where I found I don't want to do deals to be transactional, but I want to do deals to be relational. So I'm going to get into that, what that looks like. And this is what I'm excited about is the value concept. And this is where I think you should really try to focus, the best you can, the value concept. So one of the things, a simple question I ask all the time, it's part of my core values. And it's just asking the simple question and looking, and it lets people know that you're authentic. How can I help and how can I add value to what you're doing? So if you're looking at it as a problem, you shift your thought from transactional to relational. So the core question, instead of asking, how do I get my price? You ask the seller, what is the real problem you need solved right now? And how can I help you? You're a problem solver, not a buyer. A house is just a box of wood and wire. So if you're looking at that, you want to be a problem solver. The seller doesn't care about the house. They care about the situation they're in, the divorce, the inherited mess from the property across country, the medical bills they have piled up, or the looming foreclosure, their job loss. The list goes on and on. But it's important to ask questions to find out what the problem is you're trying to solve. So this is very important. It's not about getting the best number or winning. It's looking at the conversation and then saying to yourself, how can I help here? Or what value do I bring to solve this problem? And once you change that way of thinking, people can see through that. Kids can see through that. So I know adults can. So maybe you can't fix things. You come to a deal table and you're trying to work something out and you can't. But what you can do is send them to someone else or give them advice on how to fix things themselves. Listen closely to what is going on. What are their pain points? And be creative and thoughtful. And how can I truly help? Is one of the questions you want to kind of sit down with yourself and look at their problem. And that becomes, to me, rewarding for all parties. And it's much more enjoyable. I know, just like you, when somebody sits down and wants to really help or think through or solve a problem for me, I really appreciate it. And I know others appreciate it. So let's look at creating value out of thin air. Let's just do a quick case study. I had a situation. The seller wouldn't budge on their high price. I thought it was high for the market. People were walking away from the deal. So there's a lot of win-lose people that were walking away. Other people sat down. How do I make it win-win? The investor tries to haggle them in the middle. It just didn't come to terms. So I tried to have a value creation approach. So I asked, why did you need that exact number? They talked about they needed cash to buy an RV and travel. But They also need 60 days to clear out 30 days of junk from the garage. So looking at that, their problem was they wanted some cash now and they wanted extra time to clear out the garage. So a solution you can give them from their price, maybe the seller would give you terms or financing, seller financing, creative financing. So it might be a way for you to get a great deal and to get the property with less money. So this is this is really a gold mine if you can look and see what the core problems and try to solve them. Look to leverage the price that you want and ask them for terms that work for you. Many times, this doesn't matter. At least in my mind, it doesn't. Now, to a seller, maybe it really does. I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. The price, a little more, a little less, doesn't matter. For example, we just talked about this owner finance deal. What if you give them their asking price, give them what they want, but you get a low payment for 10 years that allows you to cash flow really well for 10 years, maybe bring the property's value up, do some repairs, raise some rents, or you get a lower down payment to get you into the property. What if that maybe it's a lower interest rate? I mean, there's a lot of ways to chunk it up, but a shorter amortization timeline. Maybe they want a huge down payment, but a small purchase price. So you can give them more cash now, but a smaller purchase price to still meet their needs. The key is the more questions you ask to solve their problem, the more it really helps you to solve their problem. So the more questions you ask, once again, the more information you get, you're looking for ways that you can solve their problem and in turn, give them what they want, and then you can get what you need. And this really does work. So just looking at this, I've tried it many times. There's some pros and cons to it, obviously, but I heard this long ago and I believe it. The only reason you don't close more creative financing deals is because you can't explain it well enough. So it really hit me when I heard this one time a speaker say that. So it hit home for me. And I took some time and I thought, I need to understand this. I think I understand it well, but I need to explain it well. I think one of the keys is really taking complex things or high level things and making them super simple to understand. So I learned the three big things to help sellers and buyers to really break it down in a palatable format. First, you only get, let's say you only get 100K for your property, but the owner finances it. But over the life of a 30-year mortgage, for example, the bank's going to get 287K. What if you could give them 287K for a $100,000 house? Then you get to stretch out the tax consequences they can. They're not paying one big capital gains hit to offset that. And then those are two of the big ones, I think, giving them more money because they're financing it, the tax benefit. Finally, they get a good monthly income from the buyer to live off of or to have in their pocket every month, all while I improve the property, I improve the operations better. So it's just a way to look at how you can see what the real problem is. Plus, you offer to pay maybe for the junk removal, like we talked about earlier, pay for a company or have your guys do it, to clean the garage out for them, to let them stay for 60 days and be rent free after closing if they don't have a place to go. You give them immense value and peace of mind and time, and then you get the terms you need to make the deal pencil out. So this is just one example. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but of how you can be a superstar and help them a ton, yet you get a deal that pencils out for you with good terms. I think it's real important to look at that. Not only what they get, but what you get. And it's a really a great deal with a value add and help mentality. So let's talk about one deal versus the 10 deal methodology. And it's just the way that I look at I want to do 10 deals with somebody, not just one deal. And how you do it is getting referrals, or if they have more property, you can do more deals with them. But if you burn a bridge on the first deal, they're not doing any more. So if you're the concierge versus the haggler, when you act like a concierge who solves problems, the transaction transforms into a relationship. That's what we want to talk about is relationships. We're not talking about getting the best deal. So that can snowball that the seller tells their neighbor who also wants to sell, or other investors tell other investors you're good to work with. And then that wholesaler realizes if you're doing a deal with them, you don't retrade the last minute and start bringing down the deal. But now they want to bring you off market properties, but you lose that once you start beating them up. So before a wholesaler sends out a deal to their email list, you want to be the first dibs. So having that value creation, it builds a moat around your business. And it helps you stop chasing deals because the deals start chasing you. People want to do business with you. And I can say my best deals and the best packages of properties have come this way. It really does work. So I want to do many deals with investors, not just one deal. So to give you some concrete work to do and how this really makes sense, I call it the three magic questions. I love talking about this. I've brought it up before. I like to ask and guide on how to use this sequential order of things to build relationships, to add value, particularly when you're networking with experienced real estate investors. So I want to get into the three magic questions, kind of what that looks like and what it means and how we can kind of get it going for you. So the first thing, the three magic questions, how can I help you? So just sitting down with no agenda, a clear mind, and how can I help you or add value? So how to use this? You ask first to offer concrete, actionable support. So you're giving something before you ask for something. So you're planning before you're reaping. So rather than starting a conversation by asking for a favor or to provide tangible solutions, like offering to take a property photos is what you can do, checking in on their contractors. This immediately shifts that dynamic from you being a novice looking for a handout to being a proactive partner offering real value. I think that's really important in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, there's a couple of examples, but you could use many, many more examples. Just think, can I go look at a place, change locks for you, pick up trash? What can I do? Can I try to find you a mower? So the second question is, what ideas do you have for me? So how to use this? Ask the second question. It honors their experience, opens the door for them to mentor you naturally by validating their experience and asking for their input. You make them feel respected and more willing to share their strategies and insights with you. So when you find somebody who wants to sit down and talk to you, don't just say, hey, mentor me. Have some ways, some ideas of what you're looking to get out of it with them. And it really shows that you care and you come prepared and you want help from somebody. So first is, how do you help? What ideas do you have for me? Number three, who else do I know? Do you know that I should talk to? Who else do you know I should talk to? So how to use this? Ask this to create, who will create for you a multiplier effect in your network, because now you're opening their network up to yourself. So because you've already demonstrated your willingness to help and you've shown respect for their knowledge, they will be much more comfortable opening up to you. Their Rolodex, introducing you to other key players in the industry. They'll want to help you with financing, with contractors. But it's because you started out authentic. You started out with really wanting to help them and see what you could do to kind of move the needle forward for them. So let's just talk real quickly about these pitfalls. Some of these strategies will wrap up, but quickly review the win-lose will destroy your reputation. Folks think you see them as a piece of meat on a hook, just a transaction. And then the friction, I think, of win-win is the mediocre compromise. It's a step up from win-lose. So you give and then they give maybe, but no one really gets what they want in the end. And then finally, you have what I consider to be the most rewarding and fun experience and the power of value creation, solving the actual problem to get to the terms that you need. So when you look at this, when I first heard this, my small brain said, if I just go around helping people all the time and give away, keep giving away, and look, always adding value, I'll go broke. I really did think that, and I really believed that too. But what I found was the opposite was true. When you lead with how can I help and add value, it's a principle of sowing and reaping. And you obviously can't reap first. You have to do some sowing. I really believe it'll come back to you 10, 100, even 1,000 fold. It was crazy to me how this works. And I live by this methodology now. I really do. And so what I found is, and I want to lay a little challenge for you for this week, and hopefully you'll find out the same thing I found out. So my action step for you is, in this week, in your next negotiation, whether it's with a seller, a contractor, or even someone in your family, really look at it and banish the word compromise. Really get that out of your thought process, and instead ask one simple question. That's all I'm asking you to do. So kind of keep it boiled down. What is the most important thing to you in this scenario? So this is when you're talking to someone else, asking them, maybe it's your spouse, whatever it is, what is the most important thing to you in this scenario? And how can I help you get it? I tell you, that opens up a game changer, a whole other world. And then it becomes, just watch how dynamically that instantly shifts things, that it moves things from compromise or even negotiating to open-ended person who's willing to talk to you. Do I get this right all the time? Heck no, I don't. I know I don't. Will you get this right 100% of the time? Heck no, you won't either. But when you lead with this, it's amazing, and the results are amazing too. So as we're kind of signing off today, real estate really is a relationship business, but it's disguised as property business. So I really believe if you stop trying to win each deal and you start trying to solve the other person's problem, I think that's when you really get some traction. So I love this quote. I think it's true. I got a banker friend. He says, no house ever walked into the bank to make a mortgage payment. So if I think about that, I mean, it's true. It's just not how it works. The asset may make money, but it's not making payments. So it's about people. And this is really, really, I think, a great quote. It's not how they feel about you, but how you make them feel when they think about you and you're not around. So the call to action I have today is I just want to say thank you for listening. If you could help me out, like and subscribe and hit that like button. And then if you do subscribe, so the algorithm will help other investors find this value and they'll be able to reach out. So message me for free goodies as well. I'd love to show you what we got and what resources we have available if I can help you. I really appreciate you guys for popping in today. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Profits Podcast with your host, Chris Davison.